It's been almost 10 years. I'm like, I know.
I can share with Jim.
There we go. Everybody ready? I am calling the Facilities Committee meeting for Monday, March 28th to order. Mr. Adi had to finish up some business, but he is on his way. So we'll go ahead and get started, and if we need to catch him up. Matt, would you like to introduce those at the table?
I'll let Chris do that. You want to do that?
Sure. So we'll start on this side with next to Matt Miller, we have Jim Boris. He's our architect. He's been here before. We got Craig Hatfield, our Senior Director of Operations. He's our main person for facilities. To my right, we got Andy Broussard and John Payne, and they're here they do work with Jenny and her team on the bond, and they'll introduce themselves a little bit later in the meeting about themselves. So.
Very good. My understanding board today is that we'll be talking about a presentation from Jenny on our options for finances. We'll be talking about our timeline, possible bond issue, and about each, we'll also walk through each one of the options and our cost for those options that we requested.
We're going to start with Chris.
Yep. Wherever you'd like to start is fine. All right. Thank you, Chris.
Okay, so we'll start on the very front page here with the Dakota school grade configuration matrix. We discussed this at a previous meeting. And a couple of things that we considered is for Mr. Adi, he wanted to consider safety as one of the criteria that we use when considering options and grading those out. So we added safety to the list of criteria for that. And then we broke it down, and you'll see there was some confusion about the various options for grade level configurations versus the various options for the different plans. So what we've done here basically is we've combined it into three core options. We've got option number one, which is our current grade configuration. So that's sort of our baseline and gives you an idea for option one. And option two is the pre-K, K3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12 grade configuration. And option three is a pre-K, K5, 6, 8, 9, 12. So within option 1, 2, and 3, you'll have different iterations of those options, but the core grade configuration is the same for each one of those options. So it should help out with, is this grade configuration different than the other one? So all the options in A, B, or C have the same grade configuration to keep it consistent. So with that, we've gone through and looked at the matrix again. There's some improvements to that, but basically this helps guide various options. And if you look at it based on the different criteria that were used in a weighted level for that, you can see that option 1, 2, and 3 have varying degrees. The higher the number, the more advantageous the option is and the more criteria it meets based on the criteria we set. So basically there's a higher score, the better the option based on the criteria that were used. Any questions about that or any additional criteria that?
I'm just curious, I guess, on safety. How did you sort of rate things? Like, how did you determine what got a 1, 2, or a 3?
Well, we looked at safety from a variety of different things. A current one, the way we set up, we talked about it a little bit last time, when you have like a K3 or K2 building, the safety around that is harder to manage. We have all adults and no older kids to help manage that piece. So it's not ideal, but it's not to say that it's not safe.
Sure.
But you just don't have those older kids to help with that safety aspect of it. So when we compare option 1 to 2 and 3, we have older kids that may be able to help with in a safety or emergency aspect. That's how we graded that out that way. That makes sense.
I will throw one other thing in there that if you look at option 3, that's really kind of geared towards a neighborhood school, whereas option number 1 is geared more towards a grade level school. So the busing would be much less for option 3. Kids are not on the bus near as long. A lot of them may be walking even to school. So the busing and transportation comes into some of that safety also, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. Any other questions about the grade configuration matrix? Great, we'll move on. So the next sheet that you have here is the summary of all of the options. It's on one page for you to look at, and we'll go through each individual option here in a little bit, but there's some of the things to look at on this page and to consider. You'd have your cost to renovate, your cost to replace, and that is determined by what the OFCCE considers the cost to renovate or replace based on bringing everything up to the current design manual, which is 2021. We have that, then we have the OFCCE renovate replace ratio. Basically, that's just a math equation that we talked about before, where the cost to renovate versus the cost to replace. And the target number for the OFCC is 67% or below. They would recommend a renovation on that building. Anything 67% or higher, they would recommend a replacement of that building. They say it's more cost advantageous to a district to look at that from that perspective. It's not to say that it's set in stone or you need to do that. That's just sort of the base guideline that you need to follow with the OFCC. There's always waivers you can apply for if you want to look at something different than that.
I'm sorry, Chris, I'm not sure I heard you totally. You said that's the Ohio School Facilities Commission.
Yes, that's sort of their baseline on when they determine a school to be cheaper or more cost beneficial to renovate versus tear down and rebuild. So that's their criteria they use, but it's not set in stone where you have to follow that or you don't do anything. You can apply for waivers and have rationale why you want to keep a school that's above that 67% threshold. So that's just their recommendation, but there's always community input and feedback as well to determine what that final recommendation will be from this group.
Okay.
And again, we try to break it down into 3 core options. You know, we have option 1, which is basically our current grade configuration option. Option 2 is the K3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12. And option 3 is again the pre-K, K5, 6, 8, 9, 12. So we'll go through each one of these in more detail, but this just gives you a general overview and a comparison for each one. It gives you an idea of what would be explained in the detail later. A couple of things, again, to consider when looking at all these cost sets are based on 2021 costs. So that is our current cost set. So again, depending on when the master plan is finalized and actually implemented, those costs may change or will change for sure. But just so you know, this is a snapshot in time of what it would be right now.
Chris, can I
Yeah.
ask a quick question?
Yes.
Are you putting this up there or just in front of us?
Just in front of you, we're going to put it on the website to share so people can
Okay.
go through. We're just recording this and it's going to be played back.
Right.
We can have the files attached
I was
to
just
that
curious with
link. Yep.
my own.
Easier to read.
No, I was just, yeah. a little bit. But it's fine.
So options 2 and 3. 2 and 3 all assume the decommission of 10 schools in those options. So we talked about before. And another interesting thing about this as we go through it, all the options cost-wise are within a pretty close range of each other. You know, you're talking, it seems a lot to us, you know, personally, but $25 million is the range between the low cost and the high cost, which is not a whole lot of money as far as master planning goes and the cost of construction. So no matter what we do going forward, really, since all the costs are relatively similar, we should really not focus on the cost and really focus on what's going to be best for our community going forward, because they're all within a good close range for that. So anything about the overview before we dive into the options?
I'm very surprised. I'm very surprised that the numbers are as close as they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were kind of surprised as well when it all came down. We looked at it. We were like,
Mhm.
wow, there's,
Interesting.
yeah.
I think when looking at option 1, 2, or 3 versus the priority level that you listed over here, I think option 3 far exceeds our priority levels. I'm sorry, I'm back a page. And then option 2, you know, somewhat falls in line with the priority levels. And then, you know, option 1 is pretty much below the priority levels. So I think that's just interesting to note that you basically, the options are, not really our best option, probably in the middle, and then the other one far exceeds the priority levels that you guys have listed there. So that's just interesting to note.
Yeah, and option one really is our current configuration. So there's two iterations of option one that we consider. Option 1A basically is what we're looking at is doing renovations on all of our buildings. We're not doing any new buildings or anything like that. We're doing some additions and renovations of buildings, but we're keeping our same grade level configuration. We're keeping our same buildings that we have right now and really doing work to try to bring those up to current standards and do additions to help accommodate any kind of enrollment growth. So 1A is
I also wanted to add too, I think when you look at option one, whether it's 1A or 1B, definitely 1A is a go it alone option.
Right.
Because to try to get the OFCC to sign off to not go along with their rules on all of those buildings is probably not going to happen. So that is also the go it alone, the Lakota only plan. So when we're looking at these costs too, there's no share from the state on those. So.
Yeah, from my end, I think it would be smart if we possibly could partner with the OFC.
Yeah. Financially, it would
Yes.
bang for your buck.
I will also add on the options 1A and 1B. Architecturally, they're probably not preferred options. They'd be very disruptive of your district doing additions, little smaller additions at all your buildings around. But really, this was kind of drawn up and done as a baseline for you all to see. So architecturally, probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense, even though you could do it. I mean, if that's the way you chose to go, you could do
Well,
that.
and not only that, it's kind of like a Band-Aid. I feel like you're just putting a Band-Aid over something that it potentially will have to cost more dollars down the line. And that might not be in our best interest.
pretty much, I think. And again, for each one of these options, you'll see your master summary sheet that gives the cost and some details about the square footage, current enrollments, the proposed phases that we may look at as we phase these projects out. And the ones behind it with the little school buildings on it, sort of give you a visual about what comes, what goes away, what's added, and about what kind of time frame we would be looking at for the phasing. So for each one of those options, you'll have your summary sheet and your diagram as well. Any questions on option 1A? Option 1B is very similar again, with the difference of what we perceive as our four buildings are in the worst shape, and replacing those four buildings and renovating everything else. So those four buildings that we would look at to renovate or replace are Hopewell Junior, Hopewell Elementary, West Freshman, and Creekside. So this is sort of a queen of a status quo, just making sure we can upgrade at least some of our facilities that we're going to be sinking some serious dollars into in the near future to try to maintain those. So the only difference between 1A and B are those four buildings that are torn down and rebuilt, and everything else is renovated or added to accommodate student enrollment growth. Any questions on 1B?
No, but it's interesting on 1B that the amount that it would cost to renovate most of the buildings and maybe eliminate four buildings is about the same cost as some of the options in similar options. And it's surprising how the price does not fluctuate as much as you would think that it would do when you're trying to save your buildings. It's still really expensive.
Right.
And then you'll be spending more money down the road.
Yeah, some of them are so old.
Yes, yeah, I mean, they're gonna,
Yeah.
Yeah, the renovation cost on some of your older buildings is just really high because they're
Yeah.
basically total guts is the way the OFCC looks at those. So they would basically come in and take out all the finishes, all the HVAC systems, all electrical systems, pretty much shell them out and then put them back. So the cost on those are very, very high. But that's their goal there again, to basically reset your building to so it'll last another
Right.
long time.
So we'll move on to option 2A then. So option 2A looks at a different grade configuration to where we are right now. This option considers a pre-K standalone building, K3 buildings, 4-6 buildings, 7-8 buildings, and 9-12 buildings. So again, one of beyond option 1, so options 2 and 3, the main theme for those that you'll see is really the combination of grades 9 through 12, where there's no standalone 9th grade freshman campus buildings in options 2 and 3 in every iteration that we have. There's different ways we accomplish that, but for the most part, we're looking at 9 through 12 buildings. So in option 2A, we look at the 10 schools that we've considered before for decommissioning. And those would be commissioned, and we look at building back 7 new ones and adding 2 additions. So with that, the schools that we would look to decommission are Creekside, Hopewell, PCS, Adena, Hopewell Junior, West Freshman, Liberty Junior, Hopewell Junior, Freedom, Shawnee, and Heritage. So all those schools would be decommissioned. And in its place, you would build back 4 K3 buildings, 1 new 4-6 building, 2 new 7-8 buildings, and you convert your East Freshman building into a what we call a flex campus, where it would be a shared resource between Lakota East and Lakota West to house some core programs that kids could go, mainly Butler Tech programs, or maybe some arts programs or things of that nature, where you would have to ride on the shuttle throughout the day to get to this facility. And that way you could free up the space at your main campuses to house grades 9 through 12, because you won't have all those kids in those 2 main campuses at the same time. They'll be shuttled throughout the day. So some would start at that 3rd building, start their school day there, then they'll shuttle back respectively to their East and West campuses for your other classes. So that's how that would work in that scenario.
Can you give an example of programming?
Well, I know I mentioned it before, like up in Dublin, they have the Emerald
Emerald
campus, and they have a lot of like their Butler Tech type programs. I don't know who they use up there, but their Butler Tech programs you could look at. You can look at programs like your Incubator U or your Cyber, where there's a small amount of kids in each, but those could all be housed at that one location, so you can have bigger classes and maybe more opportunities for that. You could look at even different art classes, or maybe things like the Spark. Spark's a great thing for Lakota East, but Lakota West doesn't have anything similar. So maybe housing that there would provide the opportunity for our kids across the district to have a program like that. So it'd be really whatever we think would be great opportunities for kids, and that's what we would sort of look at putting in that campus. So
Because do we do cyber at East and West right now, Matt?
we do.
No.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, I mean,
I'm
yeah,
sorry, I
we
have
do
another
one.
question.
Oh, sure.
So it'd be student focused? It's not
Yes.
for staff or professional development, it'd be student
No.
focused.
Yeah, basically it's a way to, instead of building a 3rd high school, really to create a opportunity so you don't have all, what was it, 3,800 kids at each building, so you can space them out and have physical space between senior flex and schedules like that, that you would have the capacity to hold your entire 9th through 12th grade without building additional high school.
Could be the Thunderbird campus.
This is what Matt's been living for.
It's already
the
got a
last
name
5
for it.
years. He already has a name.
So. Any questions on option 2A? And again, the projected cost for that is 420 million for that option. Option 2B is very similar. Like we said, options 2 and 3 are pretty close. They have the same grade configuration, but there's different iterations on how we can achieve it and make it work. So in this option, again, we decommissioned those 10 schools that I previously mentioned, and we would build back K3 schools. We'd have 4 K3 schools that would build back, We'd have 2 4-6 schools in this scenario. One new 7-8 building. We would repurpose the East Freshman building to be a junior school. In this scenario, then we'd actually construct a new building to be that alternative space, flex space, like the Emerald Camp, Lakota, Thunderbird campus, whatever you want to call it. So instead of using your East Freshman as that campus, you would build a brand new building and use your existing East Freshman as a junior high space. So very similar, just a different way to tackle this grade level configuration and get all kids in high school and repurpose some of your buildings.
I'm sorry, I'm confused on the difference between 2A and 2B. I've not seen, noticed.
2A,
Yes.
2A, instead of building a brand new building to be your Thunderbird building, we repurpose the East Freshman campus to be that building.
Oh.
And we build one less junior high school. In 2A, we built 2 new junior high schools. And in 2B, we built 1 new junior high school and a Thunderbird campus. So
Now it has a name.
Thunderbird.
Better than what
I just want to say that using that name in this setting does not mean we're really naming it that, just so you know.
No, it's just for ease of communication
Better
for
than
this
Lakota
session.
land or something like that.
I would go
That's
to
I'm with you.
We were using
Lakota
Lakota
land.
land for a while.
Not so much.
Yeah.
I like the
Thunderbird
Thunderbird
speaks to our history.
better. It does.
The big difference that you can look at to kind of distinguish between 2A through 2B through 2C is if you kind of look at the 9th and 12th grade configuration, that's really kind of where it kind of gets all pushed down the chart. And so a lot of the change that you really see is how you handle in the 9-12. And there's really 3 ways to do that: build new school, do Lakota, or repurpose East
East Freshman.
Freshman, or do additions. So those are kind of the 3 differences simplified. There's differences, but those are kind of the simplified ways of looking at it.
Yeah, so that brings you to 3C, which really, instead of having that 3rd campus for the high schools to rotate through, you would build additions at your current high schools to accommodate for the 9-12 students. So again, you would still decommission 10 buildings, bring back 7 buildings. And then you would do additions at both of your high schools, pretty substantial additions to be built there. There'd be definitely some logistical things we need to work through on how those would be built, still meet the requirements for parking and everything else, but that's what we consider. So again, 2A, 2B, and 2C are all the same grade level configuration, but just different ways on how we handle the high school enrollment. So if that makes sense. And again, the 3 options are similar in cost. You know, there's not a whole lot of difference in cost in those option 2, A, B, and C.
Any questions on any of the 2s?
No, choose no.
I hope you find this a lot easier to follow than the last time.
This is, I was just gonna say, this is
Thank you.
awesome. Thank you
Thanks
so
to
much.
Jim.
Thank you. This is very much easier to follow.
We feel heard, Jim. Thank you.
I was able to follow it previously very well. Just so you know.
Well, Jim, thank you for helping those of us that are remedial.
Sure.
I talked a lot last time, so you missed all I was spinning in circles, so that probably didn't help either. So, all right, so we'll move on to option 3, and there's 3 different iterations of that too. Again, option 3 really decommissions those same 10 buildings that we talked before. We'd build 2 new schools, but then from there we would do a bunch of additions to accommodate for the enrollment growth and spreading out. So we build a new K-5 building, 6-8 building, and then do a bunch of additions to accommodate the high school and other students. So, and it has that new grade configuration, the K-5, 6-8, 9-12. some of the things that with this one is similar to the ones in option A. You would have a lot of buildings that would have additions built to them. So the potential disruption for schools and stuff like that could be hard, and just making sure we find the right spaces for that. And again, the East Freshman then is then converted to your Lakota Lane Thunderbird, whatever we want to call it. Campus.
We're going to call it Chris Passage Hall.
So option A is similar to, or 3A is option to 2, where you still have that campus for high school kids to rotate in and out of, but just a different grade configuration below that. Any questions on 3A? 3B. With this one, we look at the, again, the decommission of the 10 schools, and we would add 6 new schools. So again, it gets more back to the neighborhood school concept, where you build 3 new K-5 schools, 2 new 6-8 middle schools, and again, you'd have your 3rd high school type building to rotate students through.
Chris, just a question on the master plan enrollment. Is that the projected capacity of the building, or what you project from the last demographic study of what the
That's what
attendance would be?
Yeah, the master plan is what the OFCC projected at the end of our 10. That's what our enrollment would be.
So do we have anywhere what the capacity of these buildings would be? Or I was talking to somebody in Middletown, and for their expansion, they said a bit of an issue they had with participating with OFCC is you can't project for future growth. You can only account for where you are now. So when they opened their buildings, they were already somewhat out of space and had to put in modulars right away. Is that an issue? Or when we look at this enrollment and these plans, do we feel like we'd be able to accommodate any future growth or enrollment numbers?
Because we're already at the number they said we would be at the end of the last demographic study.
Past our
We're already past that enrollment number.
Yes. And that'd be a further conversation with the OFCC, because typically they like to look out and plan for what you're going to be.
Okay.
So
They are planning for 10 years out.
Okay.
They base, when they set the master plans, they look at the 10-year out enrollment, and that's what they set the master plan on. So they are taking that into account. So
Okay. So perhaps their target was just a bit off at
yeah,
Middletown.
it could have been off,
Maybe they're
and they
expecting a
grew
drop in
faster
enrollment.
than, yeah. I mean,
Okay.
and it
Thank you.
happens in different
Yep.
districts.
and it can depend too on how you phase it in the cycle that because you can't do the entire master plan at one time. So maybe
Sure.
just their phasing didn't time out as their enrollment did either. So, but the OFCC's plan is to look at it, mark, and
Okay.
that should be your target.
Perfect.
So any questions on option 3B? Moving right through this one. Option 3C. As I mentioned before, this is still my favorite. C for Chris, maybe, I don't know.
Don't prejudice us, Chris.
No, so this option is the one that we talked about where we decommission 10 buildings and only bring back 3. But the big thing of this is looking at your current high schools and repurposing your current high schools to be your middle schools. Currently, they hold grades 10, 11, 12, so they could easily hold grades 6, 7, and 8. So there wouldn't be much you would have to do for that. You would have to build 2 new high schools to accommodate the enrollment for grades 9 through 12. And then you would build 1 new K-5 school with that. And your East Freshman School and Plains and Ridge will all be converted to K-5 schools. So you repurpose your buildings as much as you could and build 2 new high schools. Again, there's still some logistics you'd have to work through on that about the sites and where you would build them. If you're decommissioning 10 schools, you have 10 pretty good sites you can look at and consider for new buildings. So that could be something down the line that we can talk about in further detail if this is one of the options that's taken. So, but that usually comes up, okay, where are you going to build? So we have land. It's just
Right.
and not those logistics.
And I feel like when you have two new high schools, you can accommodate different plans that we have, like, sorry, I forget the names of the plans you guys just mentioned, but like the technical.
Oh, the Cyber Academy.
Yeah,
yeah.
Cyber Academy, and then there was another one that you mentioned as well, and you can accommodate that in the new high school and for future accommodations for plans as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, does C have a Lakota land?
It does not.
Okay.
The other benefit too of, and I'm not trying to prop Chris's idea up at all, but when you look at, new buildings, as those of you that have been here for a while, know that people can get sensitive when you take their buildings down and people have some sort of attachments.
Yeah.
One of the benefits I think of having two brand new high schools would be everybody's going to go to a brand new high school.
Right.
Yes.
So sometimes through some of these plans, you might not get a new school, or maybe you will. But if you did something like this, everybody's going to funnel into a brand new space.
Right.
So something to think about.
And I feel like this is just a lot cleaner. The process is a lot cleaner. It's an easy addition. I mean, two easy additions and then one more addition later on. So I feel like for me, when I'm looking at it, it was just a lot easier to understand and to picture for the future.
Jenny, from an ongoing operational efficiency perspective and savings in that regard, do you have a preference or recommendation on any of these plans at this point in time, or have you not had an opportunity to get there yet? I apologize.
No, it's okay. And one of the sheets behind this sheet is something that we'll get to at the end, but yeah, Chris's team and as well as Jim's team and the treasurer's office team, we have discussed operationally, there should be savings if we go from, 23 buildings down to 13.
Yeah.
So
Makes sense.
there are some cost savings that we believe that we would be able to take advantage of. And we've tried to,
Capture
we've tried to list those out and
That's not in
Will
this
be-
information though.
it is, but we're going to save it to the end.
the very last sheet of your
Yes.
packet.
Have we established a budget?
So the budget itself would be these numbers included on this sheet.
Okay.
And as far as the budget for the operating costs that we believe we could save, we've tried to capture that on another sheet. But we do believe that there would definitely be some efficiency savings from, going down to less buildings. So.
I'm sorry, I'm not clear on that. So when you are building a house, you have a budget that you want to reach. Like, do we have money set aside for this? Do we have money allocated for this? Or
So
where
that-
are we pulling all of this from?
So that will be that you are jumping ahead.
That's way down the road.
We are definitely going to be
Know your role,
talking about
Mrs.
that.
Gordon.
How can we pay for it? Yes, we are going to be talking about that.
Have to talk
Mhm.
about that.
Okay.
I have a couple questions. They're not questions as much as since this is to the public, clearing up two rumors of phone calls that I've gotten this past week. No matter which plan we pick, we don't have to buy any land, correct?
Correct.
And I got a call last week that somebody's neighbor's sister's brother's cousin works at central office and said that in this plan, we are definitely going to have two pre-K buildings, one for East and one for West. And that is not correct.
That is not
One
correct.
pre-K building.
One pre-K. In the plan, when we looked at it, to be specific,
Right.
the plan was to have Liberty ECS
Be
be
the-
that pre-K
Be the
building.
pre-K. So in all these plans, Liberty ECS would turn into a pre-K building. So
Correct. Correct.
just want to put that on the record since I got those questions this weekend.
And that is, we'll post these online so the public can
Right.
see them. But as it specifically says, Liberty ECS would become that pre-K building in our planning.
One of the questions I had, that if we can just take like the 30-second elevator speech about, and I know it probably depends on which plan we would go with, but like the timing of like phase 1 versus phase 2 versus future. Is that something that you or Jim could mention or talk about?
It really is plan dependent, but it's several years.
Right.
It's probably,
10.
it depends, once you kick it off and you go through the whole process, especially if you're designing new buildings, go through the design, process to do that and get them approved, get it done, look at the logistics and how you're gonna move kids and do things. So if we had a plan, had it funded, we're probably talking 3 years,
Phase one.
phase one to start. And that's probably pushing it.
It's
Yeah.
pretty fair, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, the process, particularly when you go through the OFCC process, there are a lot of submittals and they're very careful with their paperwork and
Right.
checking as they go. So it is a little bit of a slower process, but a very thorough process.
Any other questions about options? All right, we'll come back again to look at some of the general fund and permanent improvement costs, but we'll turn it over to Jenny now to talk about the financial part of this all.
So during our last committee meeting, we did talk about the cost and then, like Darby mentioned, okay, if you're going to build a house, are you going to need a mortgage? How are you going to fund the building of that home? So one of the things we're going to talk about tonight is that we've been thinking about this for years. And so we're going to address what we've done in preparation of this discussion and then what our options are looking forward. And the folks that are going to talk to you tonight, I'm going to hand it over to Andy and John, but we've been working with them for, I think, 10 years, right? Well, but here, I think I've been working with you for about 10 years, since 2010. And they've been the financial manager, the municipal advisor for Lakota. And so when we start talking about debt, there's a few people that I need on the team to help us through that. And so municipal advisor is one, our bond counsel, our attorneys who specialize with bonding is another. And then we've got underwriters who help us price and sell those bonds. But I'm going to turn it over to John and Andy, and they're going to lead us through. We're going to start this discussion tonight. We can go down many, many rabbit holes, and we're not going to do that tonight, but we're going to start the conversation. And then there's more discussion we can have, but hopefully we'll hit the topics that we believe are most important tonight.
You have a lot of them. There you go. I think you take one.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, and thank you for having us in for this portion of the discussion.
Make sure you're talking into your, as we are recording it, sorry.
Okay, apologies. There you go. As Jenny mentioned, we have been historically the district's municipal financial advisor. We've been involved in 9 transactions for approximately 145 million since 2010. This is a business not well known to people in that we advise governments on how to finance facilities. And our firm name is Bradley Payne Advisors. Andy Broussard and myself, John Payne, we are the 2 partners of the firm. And so when Mrs. Logan called us and said, hey, we actually had a meeting this past week, late last week. And hey, we've got our options. We have some numbers. We'd like to know how we might go about paying for this. We had to put some materials together over the weekend and look at these options. In our discussions, we decided, because of all the options that Chris had given us, we decided for ease of describing cost to use the number 420 million. It's the highest. It was mentioned earlier by Chris that with bond issues like this, and we'll get into this, a difference of 10 or 20 million is something that we can make assumptions that if it's 20 million lower, the millage would be a little lower, but we'll talk about all this. But it's very close. Bond issues get paid over a long period of time, interest rates change. So we'll talk about the dynamics from our perspective, because these numbers, of course, don't get known until you actually do the bond issue and the financing. There's very little difference in these options from a cost perspective. Okay, so we just picked the highest one. So you can sort of look at that and say, well, it might be a little lower, but we're dealing with estimates because we're going to talk about what we don't know about the financing this early in the process. The short news and the good news is that, as Jenny had mentioned, over the years, we have been discussing the potential. It was no secret that eventually this district would have to do some facilities improvements and some new facilities. And so the treasurer's office with their financing team has structured the old bonds, and this is a combination of some of the bonds are really old and some of them were structured to accelerate their payments, that your bond payments and your bond millage really go away in a very short period of time for the existing old facilities bonds. Okay, so what we're going to try to show and describe this afternoon is that when those go away and the payments for them go away, you can layer payments and millage for the new program on top of that and have what we call minimized overall impact on the increase in taxpayers' bond millage. Okay, we're going to cover that. I just want to let you know that's the end result, is that ballot millage will be here. What you really have to collect additional will be here. Okay, and so we'll show that, what we mean by that. We refer to that as the, and I haven't used my clicker yet. I want to make Jenny or Adam mad at me. Okay. We refer to that as a minimized millage bond levy. That is not a legal term. Okay. I will show you sample ballot language. Check with your attorneys. I'm not an attorney. It is what they sent us. I have to give that disclosure. That is a term of art to be used in a campaign. This is a minimized millage bond approach. Okay. And again, it's possible because of the way the older bonds get paid off and how soon they're all gone, they're falling rapidly. I have a table for you on the next page to show your existing bond millage projection for your outstanding bonds as they stand right now. You can see that by 2028, boom, big drop. We can work around that and structure new bonds so that the payments get partially deferred until after about 28, 29, and then you go to what full payments would be. Okay, so you're sort of filling this in. It's like filling in, a hole with the new payments. It leaves you theoretically in a position where, because there are two sides of tax millages, right, for schools. There's the operating side and there's the bond side. Bonds are a separate tax. Voted bonds are a separate tax. Bonds, because you pay them off over time, that tax goes down. And when valuations grow, that goes down. Because we're structuring bond level payments, more tax value, lower millage. That's how. Over time, and plus with the restructuring that we did the last several years, the district is in this position now where you see this major drop off. Now I'm going to stop with that, Jenny, just to ask. This is an important concept. This is what we're working with. questions on this particular situation? Yes.
So would it make sense that if we pick an option that has a higher cost up front and then a lower cost years later for the second half, that it would make more sense to do something that costs more up front because we have the bonding to finance?
I don't want to answer the wrong question. My impression from the current situation is that, and this is sort of getting in the weeds about bonds, we can make any of these plans fit
Okay.
because we have some flexibility in the law. We can have payments that go like this if we want. So we sculpt those payments for the future to meet what you decide as a board is the preferred plan. So I guess the answer to your question is I don't think so, but boy, I need some more time to,
Okay.
so I go through it. But no, I don't think so. A good question. Any other questions?
Just Jenny, we've already been working on lowering this millage by refinancing and having that money go back to our taxpayers. So do you know off the top of your head what we've already saved in millage versus what has passed?
As far as millage, I do not. And here's the other thing about that millage. We have restructured that debt with the goal to pay debt off sooner versus decreasing the millage rate.
Okay.
So I know we've saved several millions of dollars for our taxpayers on the restructuring and the lower debt payments, but we kind of changed from dropping that millage over time to let's try to maintain that millage, pay the debt off sooner so that we can, like John said, layer some more of this in and not have, we're going to lower the bond millage, then we're going to have to increase it again. And we wanted a more stable bond millage rate for our community. And we've had discussions with our county auditor, and Andy went with me, and those conversations went well as well.
Thank you.
Okay. If nothing else there, let's go to the next, we'll flip over here. As I mentioned to you, we looked at the 420 million. We also looked at the 320 million, which would be assuming almost full state participation through the OFCC. Okay. So the Ohio Facilities Construction Commission, full participation, be about 25%, about 100 million. Give or take, until you hear from them, you don't know what that number is. These are not guarantees. Okay. So, but from an analysis perspective on whether or not you should be highly motivated to go after the OFCC money, I think this will help you somewhat. Okay. So we looked at both. Some basic ballot issue assumptions. Here's how ballot issues work. You tell the auditor how many years you want to repay the bonds over. There are statutory guidelines
Forward
for
a
it.
little bit. Just bring it towards you a little bit. Thank you.
How's that?
Mhm.
There are statutory guidelines for that. Okay, but in short, for a major construction project like this, which is mostly facilities, buildings, bricks and mortar, it's 40 years or below. Most school districts are doing 38, 30 years for the repayment period. Okay. And you know, if you have questions about that, we can talk about that. It's, you know, it's the sort of thing where how long are all these facilities going to last? What's the useful life? And what makes sense from a millage perspective? Into some big theory about this, because you can talk about the buildings are going to be used by today's taxpayers. You don't want them to pay most of it because there's going to be more people coming into the community in 10 years. They need to pay their share, you know, so on and so forth. So we just sort of rely on the useful life, and we end up with a calculation of around 37 years. Not set in stone. That's just how we do the assumptions. Okay. We're assuming 4%. Now, that may not mean anything to most people. We are talking. If you use tax exempt municipal bonds, you get lower rates than what your home mortgage rates might be. Okay. Sorry, having problems here. Not the first one I've burned out. Okay. If this one burns out, I'm giving it to Andy. Okay. So you're going to have a little lower rate than your typical home mortgage in the tax exempt market. But think about this problem for a minute, this challenge for a minute. We're talking about the interest rate now. Let's assume that you were putting this on the ballot, say this year. You really wouldn't do that until August. Between now and August, interest rates could change dramatically, particularly what we're seeing on the news these days. And then you wouldn't sell the bonds maybe for the next 6 months, and it would only be a portion. And you might, I mean, we've got as much as years of what we would call interest rate risk. So this number is no good. We just don't know what a good number is. Okay. And then the last assumption we use is, and this is an interesting concept that doesn't show up in any of our numbers, but it has affected the history of where your millage is. And that is, in order to make a bond millage estimate, you have to use a tax valuation. So we are using the current year's taxable valuation. Okay. So every year that tax valuation changes. If your payments were equal every year, millage would go down. And that has happened if we go back. Okay, there we go. If we go back there, some of that drop, or where we start, was just growth in the tax base. And some of it was structuring. This will happen going forward. So that ballot millage estimate's really good for a few years. And then it rarely is that much later. More taxpayers, more value, lower millage. So everything in a ballot millage estimate is wrong. Is the bottom line. So we use the best information we can right now, since interest rates are such a hard thing to put your finger on. The industry in Ohio means other people like us, and the lawyers and underwriters are using 4%. So that's what we're going with. Obviously, as you get closer to a ballot date, if rates have gone much lower or much higher, this gets revisited. And some of the concepts we'll talk about in a minute change in perspective.
So we stated that we can kind of manipulate the millage.
Well, I don't know about that word, but yeah.
Sorry, I could use a different. So my concern would be, so right now with the economy and the future, not us not being able to predict the future at this point in time. I think when it goes up, or I guess can we manipulate it so that when people are struggling in the community, we can have a lot less, would it be millage or less millage to pay?
That's a great question. Historically, and you jump in if you want to add something to this, Andy. Historically, we have done that when there were refinancing opportunities. It's very difficult to do on the front end. But say you get 5, 6, 7 years down the road and we can refinance. There might be an opportunity to provide some millage relief. There might be. So we do have several options. You can refinance just like a home mortgage. We can refinance occasionally.
But it's not adjustable is
It is not adjustable.
Right.
Yeah, these are fixed rate bonds. And so as John was mentioning, unlike your home mortgage, you could refinance every other month if you wanted to, your mortgage. These have certain call protection periods. And so generally an 8-year call, 10-year call protection on the bonds for the investor benefit because we're getting fixed rates. So you're kind of locked into a window that you really can't give that kind of relief as often as you'd like, especially if there's a bad economy or something of that nature, because you've got to collect the right millage to make sure you cover your debt payments.
I have a silly, I know this is probably kind of silly, but I know there's a lot of people who live in our community that are on retirement. Is there and are struggling to, I mean, I think we have 70% of our community does not have children in Lakota. So is there a way for those that are, older, who are living on retirement, who do not have a lot of money, that we can exclude them from, that do not have children in Lakota, that we can exclude them so they can not have to be responsible for something that is not really affecting them, so to speak?
70% also though includes young families that don't have children in the school yet.
So
It's
is
not all just retired. Some of it is just younger families who haven't started their kids in
Thank you for
school yet.
clarifying
Yeah,
that.
just.
Yeah, thank you. So, but as far as like the elderly, I guess you would say, that are living, is there a way that we can help with
Couple of
that?
comments.
Yes.
The first one is answer your questions now. To add to that, however, when we get to ballot millage, we've got a ballot millage table in here. You'll see a 65 and or disabled. There are some income restrictions on this, but in that column, you'll see they do get a break. And that's what the state has done to address that
Thank you.
issue. Yeah. Okay. Our last assumption was 25% on the OFCC. Let's go to the first ballot millage calculation here. This is the full 420 million on your current tax valuation. I'm looking at the left side of this table in the box. And this, I mean, we show how the state requires that you calculate estimated millage if you're of the math type and want to get into that. But if you go down to where it says bond millage, that's your number for this particular issue over 37 years, 5.38 mils. Everybody see that? Okay. Now remember, we're going to visit how we can offset that because of where your payments are going now. Okay. If we go to the next one, which assumes $100 million of state participation. I'm not certain that's what you'll get. Well, let's just say it is. That's close. That's what we know right now. So that drops all the way down to 4.1%, 4.1 mil. So you can see the impact that has. There are cost per household numbers on both of these tables. Not really per household, but appraised value. The highlighted ones really were a couple of are sort of in the range of the couple larger zip codes here. A couple of the smaller zip codes would be in the more 400 range. You get an idea of what the annual cost of that is for these values. Again, not really going to get there because we're going to do the minimized millage, but you see what the ballot is going to show them. Okay, the ballot's not going to tell them what their cost is. That's not how ballot language works, but this is the number if they do the math. Any questions on these ballot millage assumptions? If not, okay. So we examined, let's go over here. We examined 2 bond issue scenarios to estimate the impact of the minimized millage opportunity. 420 no state, 320 with state. Got the assumptions. Wanted to look at the ballot millage language. I've done these presentations before and received the question, hey, I mean, isn't it kind of hard to visually understand what you're asking the taxpayers if you can't see a sample of the ballot language? So that's why that's in here. This is prescriptive. There's not anything you can do about this. So you can see 37 years and 5.38 mils, okay, for the bond issue against the bond issue. That doesn't say anything, does it, about minimized millage or anything like that? Okay, so this is a campaign issue. All right. Okay. So with the 420 million, if we look at the next page, these two lines, and I'm going to apologize in advance. This was the weekend work. There's been a box put in here. It has an incorrect number in it. So I'm just going to describe it to you. Minimized bond millage estimate for 420 million. The orange line represents a sample of how the new bonds would be structured in conjunction with the disappearance or the paying off of the old bonds and where the millage would end up. For 425 millions, it would end up right around 6 mils under this scenario. And right now you're at 3.6. Okay. So this box down here should say about 2.6 million in net overall increase, not 1.8. That 1.8 came from back when we were talking about 280. It's just a mistake. So instead of the ballot millage of 538, we're talking about a net aggregate increase of about 2.6. That's the campaign goal. As,
And that's with no OFCC.
and that's with no OFCC.
Yeah.
And I state this just to be real clear about this. That's the campaign goal. 260 something we think is very doable right now, 2.6 mils in aggregate increase over your current bonds. But look, if rates go way up, then maybe it's 280. Okay, they don't move in huge steps, but you see what I'm saying. So it's a campaign goal and something you can say your goal is to do this, but it is not a pledge.
Sure.
Okay. Any questions about how that works?
Are we preparing to ask for a bond?
Well, you have to ask for a bond to fund this project.
Right.
I don't know when. I mean, that's you.
Right.
That's you folks. But at some point, yes, there are other ways to finance these projects, but you won't like them. The millage would be, up here, the bond issue is by far the cheapest way
Right.
to do it. So you'll have to ask somebody else if you're planning.
So basically just to fund what we are trying, the facilities, we will need a bond, absolutely 100%.
Yes, we do not have the financial resources within our operating or our PI fund that would fund a $400 million facilities project.
Okay.
We do not. We would need a bond issue from our community in order to fund this master's facilities plan.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
And then again, the idea would be minimize the impact of that bond. About the only thing you can do. You could, however, and we looked at this, you could ask for like a 30 mil levy and pay it off for 5 years.
Good luck with that.
That's just a rumor we don't want to start.
Oh, okay. Well,
Good luck with
my
that.
point being, it's difficult to pay for these things with
But you
cash.
could.
It's just a lot.
Turn off his mic, please.
Good.
Okay, I retract that. Okay. The next one also has the same mistake in it. It's not 0.5 mils, it's 1.2 estimated net overall. So please mark out the 0.5, put 1.2. This is with the state money. So you basically go to the ballot with a little over 4 mils and you tell them the net minimized millage goal is 1.2. So 1.2 mils, just to put it in perspective, as where you're targeting the increase in a taxpayer's aggregate millage for bonds, compares to statewide average of right around 4 mils for all bond issues since 2017. And is really nice place to be.
And it's not by accident.
It's not by
I'd
accident.
say it's a lot of hard work.
It's not by accident.
Absolutely.
Worked on it.
So, but going back to page 7, when you did your estimates there, you're basically doing that without showing the advantages of the decreasing current bonds. So if we redid this chart, the net cost to our homeowners would be significantly less than what's illustrated in page 7. But we don't have that with like 1.2 to show the net cost.
Well, I think
No, I did not. I mean,
we didn't, but I think John's point though, on these sheets is, this is a pretty prescriptive
Sure.
sheet. And so if we get to that point where we're communicating it to our community members and talking about that minimized impact, we would want to show something
Right.
like the bond millage, the bond levy is going to show this, but here's the true cost
Right.
of what it
It'll
would
be about
actually.
a third nearly of what is in
Yes.
this illustration on page 7.
Yes.
yes. I'm sorry, I did not make a separate table for that.
Right.
Jenny,
And it would
perhaps
really
we
be a
could
third
follow
of
up
the
and
way
get
it's being
that
structured.
for the board.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, a third, so it's gone down.
Yeah.
Back to page 12.
I apologize, I'm making a note here.
Okay.
Okay, I think I've probably beat that to death, that it's a nice opportunity to do a very reasonable increase in millage for everything that you're going to get here. Is nice. Oh. This is me just trying to get on the other side of the brain. This is right brain stuff. Trying to describe in plain English what's happening really with a minimized millage approach. And this is condensed as much as I thought I could condense it. I'm only putting this up there and just to get your mind working about the messaging. Oops. Last page, really, there's some disclosures on the back of here. Thank you. Securities and Exchange Commission requires us to make these. Take it home and read them. And I have an exhibit back here which just sort of describes the OFCC Expedited Local Partnership Program, which is the program I believe you would be participating in to get state money. It's sort of an overview, but to be honest, you can get on their website. It's very friendly and read a lot about it. And you can see all the districts that have been through it, where their status is and things like that. Other considerations. Minimize millage target estimated cost per residential market values. We already talked about that. There is a 1/2 mil requirement when you participate with School Facilities Commission, with the Facilities Construction Commission. Have you discussed that? Are you familiar with the 1/2 mil requirement?
Brief. I don't think we've really discussed.
We've
it.
not had that formal discussion, no.
Okay, well, just, and this is really getting into the lawyers area, but just so you know, when you participate eventually with the Facilities Construction Commission, they require a 1/2 mil contribution for ongoing maintenance. You don't have to do that until their money comes in. You're currently about 422nd in priority on their list. And now they funded many of those, so I don't know how long out they've told you. But let's say you get your funding in 7 years or something. At that point, you would have to identify where that half mill's coming from.
Which we would identify from our existing PI fund, which is 2 mills now.
Right.
So that's where we would target it.
There were discussions about just wanting maybe some information on a bond/PI levy combination. A lot of districts do this. We have seen throughout some really the whole bond/permanent improvement levy combination is really resonating with people. That's not scientific. I'm telling you what we're seeing. It's sort of, I don't know why, but it's people put in more money for maintenance if we're building all these new buildings. So that's something to think about as you have your discussions. It also then covers the half mil requirement without digging into your improvement needs anyway, sort of thing. So to think about. Another, and this really goes to the cost of the options. The OFCC, it's not a rule, guideline. Chris mentioned. I want one of those little button thingies next. If the renovation of a building, is cost 67% or more, they don't normally want to participate in that. So they may not fund it. There are exceptions to that. They will discuss that with you. If we, which I did, if we look at the project and the option ones, where you've got a lot of buildings over 67 or over, it actually will cost your ballot amount, assuming they all didn't get approved. Okay, so that's worst case scenario. Your ballot amount would be materially higher than if you did the full project with state participation because of their non-participation. So it's kind of like, wow, if you're going to participate with the state, it sort of takes out, at least financially, that first set of options. It just works that way. If you don't get reimbursed, it costs a lot more. And I put some numbers down there for you on that. Last thing I have is timing. Did you want to discuss timing?
Briefly, because we're running up against our
Okay.
time, but so the question was asked, will we need a bond issue? There's certain times you can go to your voters. Our first available opportunity would be November of 22, which would mean we would have to have all of our resolutions, everything wrapped up, filed with the Board of Elections by August, which would be a very short turnaround. What we'd like to do in our next meeting is talk about all of those ballot opportunities and those dates and when you would have to have everything finalized to get that accomplished. But your first opportunity, everything would have to be wrapped up by August. But we'll talk about that more at the next meeting.
In addition to that, you still, if you do decide to participate with the OFCC, they have certain times and guidance too that you need to apply and do your resolutions for that as well. So there's a lot of moving parts as far as timing that would need to be discussed by the board for sure.
From just a general observation standpoint, and this sounds somewhat self-serving, but I'll just tell you what we're seeing. The state, as with everybody, is seeing some frightening inflationary type projections and sometimes outcomes, not always, but sometimes getting some bids that in fact, I just did an article for it today, getting some bids that are, 20, 25% over estimate sort of thing. I don't know how long that lasts or if it gets worse. We didn't used to consider construction inflation something that would motivate someone to act quickly on getting on the ballot. But if you know what you want and what the amount is, that sort of sets up for that right now. We're also dealing with, for the first time in 30, 40 years, an interest rate environment that is volatile and unpredictable. Now, what does that mean? It means you could wait a couple of years and the rates would be much lower or much higher. These things can have some material effects on how much project you can get done. The other thing is that this is a very significant project that will take a lot of work to get it all bid out and started and done. It is interesting that under Ohio law, if you participate with the School Facilities Construction Commission, there are no guidelines or requirements on when you must sell all your bonds. If you don't participate, you have to have sold what you voted within about 5 years, which limits your flexibility dealing with things like construction increases, inflation increases, so on and so forth. So the OFCC adds that additional benefit, not promoting the OFCC. It comes with all kinds of other things. But these are things to think about from a timing perspective. Of course, we want you to go as soon as possible, not for personal reasons, but boy, you know, it's crazy out there. It's crazy.
We live in interesting times.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to thank you, John and Andy, for coming today to start this conversation. Like I said, I know there's more to come. And we have our next meeting scheduled for, Chris, when is
April
that?
14th.
April 14th at 4 o'clock. So we will continue. We'll also update those charts and get you some clean numbers on those. But if you have any follow-up questions, please let us know. But thank you guys for coming and having this conversation.
Thank you. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very helpful. Thank you very much. Matt? Is anything further?
Mm-mm.
Is
You
that
guys
it
want
for
to cover
today?
this last piece real quick?
Oh, yeah.
It takes about 3 minutes.
3 minutes is about what you had. but that's fine.
Go.
So on the very last page of your packet, you have some information about our general fund and permanent improvement fund costs, and maybe some elimination of cost avoidance, depending on which option you would go with. So I'm just trying to lay out some information so you have it. So we have like average estimated maintenance costs per year, average estimated capital cost per year. And we have our big three, our roofing, parking lots, and HVAC, and utility costs. So depending on how we go through this process and what option we consider, there are going to be some opportunities for either cost avoidance or cost savings on some of these areas. And this gives you an idea from the 10 buildings that are scheduled to be decommissioned in our plan options and what that could amount to. So if you look at it, you know, if we know our plan, finalize the plan, if you look at roofs as an estimate between now and 2030, we're going to spend about $14 million as in today's money on roofs on these 10 buildings. So is that money well spent? Not well spent. So that's going to help us determine if we decide on an option and the timing of that option. Do we invest a full $1.9 million in an Adena, or do we spend quite far fewer dollars to just patch and maintain until our plan comes to fruition? So those are just additional data points for you guys to consider as we go through this process to look at from a impact on our general fund and permanent improvement fund on what that could do. And I know, Linda, you said in the past, you know, what are like to haves and need to haves type of thing. And this sort of outlines, you know, the roofing, parking lots, HVAC, those we have planned every year. The column that has average estimated capital cost per year, those are more of our like to haves. So that's what's sort of left over that we try to do when we try to do new flooring or do some paint jobs or do other things that aren't very, very intensive. So as you can see, our needs are much more than our wants as far as our expenditures.
Thank you, Chris. I've been waiting a while for those.
But other than that, if you have any other questions about, I did not send that in email. I will send this to you in email. I just got this done late today, so I'll get that to you. So you have that electronic version of you, if you like that as well. And again, our next meeting is April 14th. And as we move towards that, some of the things that I would like to consider at the next meeting is really trying to narrow down the options. Would be something that we like to look at as an agenda item for next one. Really take a little bit deeper dive into the OFCC and if we want to participate in that process or not, have that discussion. And then start maybe talking about any kind of further community outreach that we want to have to get this message out and with the options. So I know Betsy and I have talked about a lot of things, but we'll be interested from the board and on what things you'd like to see as well. So those are some of the things that I would like to talk about at the next meeting on the 14th.
I'd also be curious because some of these buildings will be larger sized if we consolidate with Tracy Richter's input on how that works with our educational visioning, if that's positive and if that.
Do you
can be
want that on the
helpful.
specific options, or do you want to wait until we have some of the options narrowed down a little bit?
For me, it's a bigger, just a broader question of larger schools versus smaller schools
Okay,
before we narrow it down.
okay.
I don't need a lot of detail. I'm just looking for overall, how does that impact?
Board, other information before our next meeting that anyone would like? Chris, I have that we need a timeline in black and white. A suggested timeline would be great. Operational savings information as well, if we could, on those options. We might be able to do it by then.
Well, I
Well,
think that's what this
They
is.
put it
Yeah.
over there.
Would it be on?
If
You-
there's
you-
anything else in that in terms of decommissioning, so it's still going with larger buildings.
Right.
You still have other operational costs with a larger facility, correct?
Yes.
So what, I guess I'm looking for the balance between that.
So looking for, then if we bring on 3 new buildings, what will be the net result? Yeah, okay.
The bigger picture for us.
Mhm.
Is there anything anybody else needs? If not, between now and then, let's submit that through Matt.
Or I just would like to I would just
Sure.
like to, by the next meeting, narrow these options down.
We'll be doing that at the next meeting, I think. But I do want to be sure, as we're talking about narrowing options down, one of the most important parts of this project to me is the due diligence for our community to have a chance to weigh in. And so even if we all decide, for instance, that the ones keeping our existing facilities, for example, and just doing renovation, I think even if we decide that's not something that we agree with, I think our community should have a chance to weigh in
I just think,
on some different big buckets to what's important to them.
I just think 11, currently we have 9 options, 10 options out here. I think that's a lot of options to put out to the community. I think we could narrow it down, and maybe there's one from each bucket or something.
That's what I'm thinking too.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we
makes
keep
more
in mind that our community needs to weigh in on this.
Absolutely. And I
So,
think there's a plan for that. So, yeah.
and hopefully we'll also have some sort of at least a general outline of what we'll do with the community engagement by that point to
Betsy has
present
one,
to the
yeah.
board as well.
Perfect.
I had a question about this, the general fund and permanent improvement plan cost elimination. Do we owe anything on these schools? Is that incorporated in capital costs per year? Are they paid off? Are we,
Good. I'd have to, I don't know if any of these are still on any of the active bonds or not.
So the debt that we still have remaining is represented in those charts that John went over. But if you're specifically asking like which buildings are we paying for, I can provide that to you. That's not, included there, but I can bring that.
Are you specifically looking at, are we still paying any debt service on any of these 10?
We are.
so when we demolish it, we're still going to be paying on that
Oh,
bond?
I see what you're saying. Let me go through and compare the debt that we're still paying on buildings versus the demo. I can do that kind of comparison.
And then would we sell this property and gain some of that back? Or is that
Those are
part of the?
questions that we haven't determined yet.
Right, and I just put this on there. There's land values that the board would have to determine what you'd want to do with it. Some of it may be repurposed to build if you want to do something. Some of it you could sell or repurpose or do something else. That's just another data
So until
point.
we decide what plan we want to go to, then that's like the next step after we start the process. Then that's another step that we figure out what
Correct.
we want to do. Okay.
Lots of steps.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, board, anything else?
No, and it's
Thank
fine.
you,
Thank you.
team, for all the great work that you're doing. We appreciate it. We're going to adjourn our facilities committee meeting. And we will begin in. I have